starting a new project, and it begins with this. It's a box of rocks, stones actually. Bunch of different colored stones. And a new tool. This is a CNC router. Computer numerical control router. And this one that I decided to get is the Genmitsu 4040 Pro Max CNC router. Just arrived yesterday. Now the other thing that's important for me to tell you is I am not a computer person. So the thing that perhaps I have the most trepidation about is the first C in the CNC, which is computer. I'm going to have to learn some computer-aided design in order to be able to use this. So today is July 11th, and I hope to have this project done by Christmas. And a lot of that time will be spent learning how to do some of the design work. And I'll be making a game board, actually 4 game boards for my nephew, Joshua. He asked for an Azul game board. I had never heard of the game before, and he showed it to me, and it's a game of strategy from Portugal. I've wanted to do an introduction video on this, and I'm finally taking a moment to do that. Got a little bit ahead of myself, got a little excited. But back in May, I was talking to my nephew Joshua, and I asked him what he would like me to make him. And with little hesitation, he told me he wanted an Azul game board. I had never heard of the game, and he showed it to me. And he showed me an example of it on Reddit. And this is the example that he showed me. And that cried out to me that it needed a CNC router. This project was posted on Reddit 3 years ago by a Reddit creator by the name of u/z manmurf, and I have to give a great deal of credit to that individual for the program that he or she wrote. I downloaded that program, and I've brought it into my computer, and I'll talk more about that in a little bit. But I've kind of avoided the CNC world for a long time because I am quite literally the definition of an analog man in a digital world. I have not kept up with technology. I use Apple products, Apple iPhones, iPads, and I have a Mac as well, and I use that almost exclusively because it seems to be very user-friendly to me. But PCs and Windows operating systems have always been problematic for me. And in June, I started doing a great deal of research trying to figure out which CNC machine I should get. And I finally decided on the SainSmart Genmitsu 4040 Pro Max. There's no, I'm not getting anything from SainSmart for this. I just started doing research, and that's the one I came up with. Little tidbits here and there. And one of the things I found out very early on is there is not a whole lot of patience in the CNC world for people who are new to CNC. So when you find someone who is patient, you kind of glom on to what they're saying. And in that regard, on YouTube, I found a man by the name of James Dean Design. And he has been fantastic. So I don't know if he'll ever see this, but he was very helpful. So it's been a bit of a slog to find help And like I said, I found James Dean Design, and I watched, I don't know if it's all of his videos, but a lot of his videos. And I quickly found out that I would need to get a computer program to do computer-aided design and computer-aided machining. I didn't understand a lot of how this worked, but the videos that James Dean Design did broke that barrier down and explained it in very simple format. So I was using a free software initially that he recommended, and I was able to create a very simple design. I have a video of that working. That's what I mean by I kind of got ahead of myself. I was doing that before I really knew what I was doing. I learned very quickly that I was going to need something else, and I was asking some people I know who have CNC routers what they use. I happened to come across a video online where someone said that with their Genmitsu or SainSmart CNC machine, they got a 90-day free subscription to Carveco Maker software. So I thought, well, maybe I'm entitled to that, and I went to the SainSmart website, and sure enough, I was eligible for a 90-day free use of the software, and then I can subscribe to it. And I've decided that I am, in fact, going to go ahead and subscribe to it. And I look at this program, and wow. I mean, wow. So, again, I go online, and they put together almost 70 videos on how to use their software. Well, again, I'm not a computer person, so, I'm not exactly sure how this is going to go. So I started watching the videos, and they're really well done. They they take you through something as simple as saving a file to doing relief work, and they break it up into basically 3 different categories. One, I believe, is design, project, and then tool paths. And basically the way it works in CNC is you start with computer-aided design and you create your project. And this is where I downloaded the file into Carveco. That file, I believe, was written for a laser, and now I had to slightly modify it for CNC work. And I downloaded it into the Carveco program and went through and manipulated that design. And then you get to the computer-aided machining where you create tool paths. And that's where you basically tell the program what you want to do. So in my case, what I want to do is I want to do some letters and numbers, and for that I'll use a different bit or end mill. I want to route out little pockets, and there's a tool path for that. And then I want to cut the whole project out of the blank, and there's a tool path for that. So that's the computer-aided machining aspect. Then you save all that into another file, and that file's called a G-code. And that is what you send to this, which is the G-code sender. And the G-code sender, and my understanding of this, I could be wrong, is this is just a Word file. It tells the machine what X-axis and Y-axis to go to, and also the Z-axis. So left, right, forward, back, up, down. And that's a very simple program from here to the machine, but to get to that, you have to first go through the computer-aided design and the computer-aided machining. And the Carveco Maker has been a very intuitive program for someone who is not computer literate. And that's the best I can say about it. So I'm almost to the point where I'm ready to start a test machining. just ran my first true test cut for this project, and it turned out really well, but it took a really long time. And this is what it looks like. And I'm really pleased. The right half over here, I ran with the recommended settings for the end mill. And this is the end mill that I used. On this side, I increased the speed at which the router moves left and right by 50%. And the initial plunge, the amount of distance it goes down, I increased by 50%. And in doing that, I was able to do this about a third faster. So this went really well. Now I have to change the bit, and you can see that this is a different style end mill. And I am going to do the letters and the numbers with this. Well, this is CNC work, computer numerical control, and it starts with obviously a computer program. This is the one that I'm using. It's called Carveco Maker, and for someone who doesn't know a lot about computers, this has been, as I said, a terrific program, and I'm not sponsored by them at all. I'm paying for this program. These are the designs that I created in computer-aided design. Now, as I said earlier, I actually downloaded this design from the internet from someone who had written it for a laser cutter. So there were some problems with it that I had to correct, and you just go through the tutorials and it'll tell you how to use this program. After I created this, I then went and created what are known as toolpaths. And toolpaths are part of the computer-aided machining process that you need to go through in order to use a CNC. So Carveco Maker does both the computer-aided design and the computer-aided machining. And when you go into the toolpaths, you tell the program what it is you want to do. So for example, in this area, I want it to do what's known as an area clearance, and in here I want it to do something else, and I used a V-cutting program for that. And then if finally I want to cut the whole thing out, and that's a profile, and I just told it that's what I want to do. I go into what's called post-processing, and post-processing is where I save the file. I save the file, and then I go over to another program, and in this case I'm using this, the Universal G-Code Sender, and I simply download the project that I want, and in this case it's going to be the top game board letters and numbers G-code. Select open, and you can see over here it gives me a visual depiction of what's going to happen. Now all I need to do is start the machine and hit play, and we're off and running. So let me go ahead and start the router. And now I hit play. You can see that the machine is running, and the machine is running. Now I'm going to turn on the shop vac. This is the first practice cut, and it turned out pretty well, but I had to do some modifications. And when I ran this through the CNC, I didn't go all the way through, as you can see. What I did was I left, I think it's 1/10 of an inch. So all I need to do is kind of force it down and it breaks right through. And I go down so that I don't rip the wood fibers in this direction. And I'm left with this. This gets thrown away. Now, turn the router on and run this through. I have a bearing here that will ride against the edge of the piece and flush cut to the edge. Now a little bit of light sanding and that cleans up perfectly. The other thing that has been a bit of a surprise to me is how slow the process is. It has taken me 8 hours to create the game boards, 4 game boards, 8 hours to create 4 scoreboards, and 6 hours to create what are called the factories. And the factories are just these. I have to finishing it, but 6 hours to create 9 of these. So it has been a slow process. Now, along the way, I've learned that I can increase the time frame of that by adjusting the gerbil settings, which is G-code reference book library or something like that. And that is the firmware. And I'm not entirely sure what firmware means, to be honest with you. I know there's software. I know there's hardware. I'm not sure what firmware is. I think obviously it's somewhere between the software and the hardware. But I can increase speeds in that. The CNC router comes with what are referred to as conservative settings and recommended settings. So I really haven't changed that. I don't want to damage my machine at all. I'll learn more about that as time goes on. But this has been a slow process. And that's given me time to reflect, to think, as I always do when I'm woodworking. This project is for my nephew, Joshua. Joshua is our, I don't want to say quiet one, though he is. He's what I would like to be when I grow up. He thinks before he answers. He takes time to listen. And in our family, that is a rare commodity indeed. He's always been, like I said, quiet, the quiet one, but he's very engaging. He's very smart. He'll talk your ear off on subjects that are interesting to him, but he listens. And like I said, that's a rare commodity in our family. And I've always admired him for that, to be honest. Watched him grow up, and it's always funny because, you know, Josh is a grown man, and he has his own life. He owns his own home. And I still see him as a little boy, and I've talked about this before. When you know someone as a child, you see that in them. Everyone I've known since they were babies, I still see them as children, and Joshua's no different. I can still see the little boy in him, the baby, the little boy in him, and it's been amazing watching him grow up. But he's a grown man, and you know you have to, or I have to realize that it's difficult to think of little Josh as being a grown man. But this project is for Joshua. He thought of it when I asked him rather quickly, and it has been fascinating to learn this whole process. And it's also ironic that I'm doing it because of Josh. He always makes me think, and this project has certainly done that. So let's finish up. We just have a little bit to go. I have the G-code sender. I'm using Universal G-code sender up. It's ready to go. I've paired it with the router. Need to set the Z-axis of the router, so let me do that really. Time to add the stones, and through some experimentation, I found the best thing to do is to apply the epoxy with a brush, and then you just take the stone, and these fit pretty tight, so I don't need a lot of epoxy, just enough to hold it in place. And I can tell you that this is a lot better than what the first attempt was. That one, I don't even need any epoxy, but there you go. Just pop it in and try to keep, epoxy off of your hands, and it just gets everywhere. What you saw there was that stone was just a little too big, just a little too big, and I'll have to sand it down if I need it. That's the nice thing about using the CNC, is that these tolerances are so tight. It took me a while to determine exactly how big I wanted these squares for these stones, and each stone is off just a little bit, and I mean 1/1000th of an inch, 2/1000ths of an inch. So some of these fit loosely in here, and the resin will hold it down, the epoxy will hold it down, and some of them fit very tightly and probably didn't even need any epoxy, but it's still there, and it's holding it down. So that's it. That's the white. Now I'm going to go back and put the various colors in. The game is done. Sitting over there, may do a little bit more final finishing, but the game is done. Now it's time to make a box for the game to go into. And for this, I'm going to use a maple wood to give a nice contrast between the game and the box. I've cut it to raw length, or I should say rough length, and now what I need to do is machine it. The wood is S2S, which means it's surfaced on two sides, so this side and this side. So I want to bring the thickness down. I'll plane it here, and then I'll rip it on this side to the proper width. I'm gonna move that camera and bring it down here so you can see it close up, and during the editing I'll cancel out the machine noise. So what you just saw me do is rip these boards down to clean up the opposite edge of the surface piece. Now what I'm going to do is rip them to the exact width that I want. Okay, so they're ripped to the exact width that I want, and now what I can do is start machining the mortise and tenons. That's going to take a while to set up. And shoot, I just realized I should have cut some scrap to set things up, so I'm going to have to do that. The other setting you need is how far in or out the workpiece is, and what that affects is the looseness or the tightness of the fit. I finally got it set up to where I need it, and here is the test piece. So here is the dovetail, and this will be the front and the back, and then these are the pins, and it just slides together like that and creates an incredibly tight joint in this direction. So I'm going to bring that in a little closer, and I'm going to start cutting the tails. That is the dovetail bit, and you can see that it is tapered, narrower at the bottom and wider at the top. It does a nice job of cutting those dovetails. A straight cutting bit to cut the pins. So let's go ahead and get started. So now I'm going to cut the pins. Now I have to reposition this, and I simply loosen the jig, lift it up, turn it around, and drop it into place. And it's all set. All I need to do now is route out the pins, and I should have a perfect joint. All that time to do the setup, and it comes down to this, whether or not we got a good fit. So let's see. And it's a little tight. It is a little tight, unfortunately. There you go. You see that? It slides together. Well, I've assembled the box. I haven't glued it yet. I just wanted to put it together so that I can get some accurate measurements on the length and the width of the box. I'm going to be inletting the base of the box into a dado that will be cut all around the perimeter on the inside. And then I'm going to cut a another couple of datas inside the box so that I can put dividers in.